journalists here. We have come today to give a letter and to make some more individual presentations here. And so let me just read this letter we're handing over to you.
Okay.
And it is, Dear Congressman Tiberi, today we are here to speak about the white supremacist terrorist violence that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia on August 12, 2017. We would like to speak with you about your statements responding to that violence. We ask you to join us in demanding the resignations of Steve Bannon, Sebastian Gorka, and Stephen Miller from the White House. Alt-right ideology has no place in our government. Sincerely, your constituents. And we've all signed this, I think.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, not
yes,
everybody.
yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. So let me hand this over here. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Nathan, and everybody.
Okay. So does anybody want to say anything?
I just wanted to clap.
Don't be shy. Hop up. Let's just go one right after the other. I know we all have things to say here and even some things to hand in. So, Anne, do you want to come on up?
Yeah. 400,000 Americans died in World War II fighting Nazis and the things that the Nazi movement stands for. So it was horrendous to see people walking in Charlottesville, Virginia, my home state, carrying flags with the Nazi emblems on it. And then it's also inexcusable that within our White House, on Trump's staff, there are at least 3 people who have very strong white supremacist or neo-Nazi ties. And they're in our White House, and they have our president's ear, and they speak for our president to the media. And that it's just unimaginable that that could be going on in our country. Those 3 individuals need to be removed. And it's also important that elected officials, particularly Republicans, call out Trump by name for his inadequate statements about what took place in Charlottesville and his lukewarm condemnation of these hate groups. And that's why I'm using the symbol. It's no Nazi collusion in 45's presidency administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
And to follow up on that, I was totally shocked to find out that Ohio has 35 hate groups within our own state. And the Daily Stormers headquartered here in Worthington.
Ooh.
So it's really important for Tiberi to decide now, how is he going to respond when we have one of these groups making an attack on Ohioans? Because it's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens, as long as we have the administration in place that we have. So I'm encouraging him to take a strong stance to let Ohioans know that we can be safe and not have to worry about something like that.
Thank you. Very important. Yes. Next. Julie?
I live in the eastern part of your district, Pat, and I want to let you know that there are hate groups. There's a history of hate groups in Licking County, and also an active hate group in Licking County. And that's on top of the Worthington-based Daily Storm folks that are in your district. So I think from that aspect, it's even more important for you to speak out and show some leadership for us.
Thank you. Very important. Leadership. Leadership. Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne. I'm from 43082 in District 12. I taught in Worthington for 30 years, never knowing about these hate groups being right here. And I say alt-right delete and no to Trump and Bannon and all his crowd, and to disarm hate.
Thank you. Very important. Someone? Next? Karen?
Hope I can get through this. I would like for you to give this to Pat Tiberi. And I think he should look at it every day. And on the back, I have information about Heather Heyer's life. Dear Congressman Tiberi, today I'm simply asking you to look at that photo and read about this remarkable young American, a woman who was murdered by hatred while she was simply walking across the street. Your president has been unable to acknowledge the terrorist act that took her life,
unable to acknowledge that she was a victim, and unable to speak her name to comfort her family, her friends, or even a shocked and grieving nation. This is not the America that we aspire to be. The Statue of Liberty is not represented by these acts. This fight came about because of taking a statue down of a man who fought to tear apart our country so that the South could continue to immorally own people. Those statues are symbols of innocent black lives that were terrorized, were beaten to death, shot, or lynched. They bring a terrible past filled with many scars. Your party and president are now attacking voting rights, rights of people of color, immigration, free speech, freedom of the press, even freedom from these homegrown terrorist groups. We all must speak against these actions or be equally responsible for the actions of these hateful groups. As a congressman, Pat Tiberi, you can do more than we citizens can. You must act to stop this hatred coming from our government. Remember Heather Heyer, a young American who died just for showing up to say no to hatred. Yet our president does not defend her, does not name her, does not honor her. He blames her and the others who were bravely resisting. Speak up and act. Remove the racists that are in our White House, Bannon, Gorka, and Miller, and yes, the president. Congress must be patriotic and put our country over party. Remember Heather.
Okay, I brought a few things here I want to talk about today, and the first is this comic book. I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of Marvel Comics, and this is, I brought here a copy of Captain America #1. Okay, this came out in 1941. This was before the United States entered the war. Jack Kirby and Joe Simon were the first people to put Nazis on the cover of a comic book, of a superhero book. This was a controversial decision that they made. It was not controversial for long, however. Okay? It was not controversial for long. However, it has become controversial again, somehow, because of our president. To show people fighting Nazis is now somehow a controversial thing. And that's a disgrace.
So this is Captain America punching a Nazi.
Punching
so
Adolf Hitler.
This is a punching Adolf. So it's basically America standing up against Nazism, which is shown in this cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now I've talked with you yesterday, Tim, and we had a nice conversation about Pat Tiberi's tweets. And I've been asking him to tweet something or make a post about Donald Trump's statements, because words matter, okay? So I want to bring out and talk about a couple of the tweets that have been made since Saturday, okay? So during the violence that was happening in Charlottesville, Donald Trump quoted, "We all must be united and condemn all that hate stands for. There's no place for this kind of violence in America. Let's come together as one." Shortly after that, David Duke, the former leader of the KKK, tweets back, to this, he says, quote, "I would recommend you take a good look in the mirror and remember it was white Americans who put you in the presidency, not radical leftists." Okay? So Trump is taken aside, basically, by David Duke during the violence and says, "We're the ones who put you in your place. Remember that." Okay? And Trump then comes out and makes remarks and says, "This egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides," he says, on many sides. He repeats that, okay? Why did he have to emphasize that it was many sides? Was he responding to David Duke? Was he responding there? Then a little bit later on, David Duke tweets, "President Trump, do you hear? Now it's time for you to disavow and condemn George Washington. Is George Washington the next person that you'll condemn?" Well, what did Donald Trump do just a few days after that? Mm-hmm. But at a press conference at Trump Tower, he says the same thing. "Oh, well, if you're against Robert E. Lee, you must be against George Washington." Where is he getting his talking points? Where is Donald Trump getting his talking points, making these comparisons? Now, this is all very disgusting, and we've all heard about this in the news, about how Donald Trump has got in trouble for playing footsie with white nationalists, the KKK, and neo-Nazis. But I'm really here to talk about Pat Tiberi, okay, because his rhetoric, now I don't know if he himself has hatred in his heart, but his rhetoric has moved along the same tracks and can be understood by white nationalists along the same lines. Okay, so Pat then, he posts on his Facebook page, and I think you read this to me, our country is a beacon of hope and opportunity for all. We must condemn the hate and bigotry that is fueling the violence in Charlottesville. Okay? So whose hate and violence are we hate and bigotry are we talking about here? We all assume that it is white nationalism, but it is possible for white nationalists to say, oh look, it's the leftists as well. Okay? And Tiberi does not clarify this. Okay? He then he retweets John McCain, who says that the white nationalists are to blame, but he doesn't put it in his own words. Yesterday, Representative Tiberi tweeted in response to Trump's horrible presser. He says, POTUS deflected from the fact that a young woman was killed and others were injured by a bigoted follower of the white supremacist movement. And I was very happy that he called out Donald Trump specifically, and I'd asked him to do this, and many of us, I believe, had. However, by saying that Heather Heyer was killed by a bigoted follower suggests that not everybody is to blame, that the whole white supremacist movement is to blame for this, as opposed to one bad apple. The whole logic of the one bad apple is corrosive. And I wonder why Pat Tiberi is being so careful with his words. Okay,
Thank you, Nathan.
I'm Larry Owen, and I've talked to you many times. And I'm starting with the quote, the tweet that Nathan just read. I don't have to read it again. And about that tweet, it's at best a muted criticism of Trump. Not enough. Trump is rotten to the core. Tiberi, you have supported Trump and his cruel policies 100%. You voted against health care for millions of Americans along with tax cuts for billionaires. And then you celebrated with the House friends there. You stand by while Trump lies every single day and never call out his lies. You stand by Trump as he attacks the press daily and calling respectable papers like Washington Post and New York Times fake news, a term he used in his last press conference to these people's faces. He said, you're fake, okay, fake news, I'll accept your, and then they never got a word in. You stood by while Trump egregiously violated the Constitution by never divesting himself of his massive business interest. You stood by while Trump refused to make his public tax returns, make his tax returns public. Never did. You stood by and watched Trump putting loyalty to himself above loyalty to the law of the land and the Constitution. You stood by while Trump courted and showed admiration for cruel dictators and insulted our allies in Europe and our neighbors in Canada and Mexico. You stand by Trump now as he guts the EPA, withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, and denied the fact that 97% of the world's scientists know that carbon emissions significantly contribute to global warming.
Yes.
This policy make human life on Earth extremely difficult and maybe impossible for future generations. You stand by while Trump denigrates science and scientists. You stood by while Trump appointed an anti-education head of the Department of Education.
Yes.
DeVos is aiming to destroy our public education system that has for decades offered education for everyone. DeVos aims to offer only for-profit education for those who can afford it.
Here, here. Yep.
You stood by while Trump appointed Sessions as a U.S. general who was supposed to fairly enforce the law. Sessions himself broke the law, he's never been called for it, when he committed perjury in a congressional hearing.
Absolutely.
Sessions is enforcing policies in a biased way that will result in more black men and immigrants being put in jails run by private companies.
For profit.
You supported Trump immigration policies, which have resulted in doing much harm to our immigration communities. That policy is one for which ICE violates immigration's Fourth Amendment rights in order to meet the deportation quotas.
Yeah.
You have voted for laws, House Bill 3004 and 3003. They haven't gone to the Senate, or they go to the Senate next, but you voted for those, which would criminalize being an undocumented immigrant, ignoring the fact that our present immigration system makes it almost impossible for undocumented immigrants to get legal status.
Right.
And you have voted for laws which punish cities which would not intimidate immigrant community by asking residents for their immigration status. Your laws and policies make immigrants afraid to report crimes, and so make our communities less safe.
That's right.
Important point.
You have supported Trump's stupid wall and his horrific mass deportation agenda.
Speak it, Larry.
You have,
No wall.
yeah, no wall. And no massive, deportation's the way it is. None. You have refused to help DACA children keep their legal status and find a way to citizenship, instead of trying to find a way to deport them all. The list of ways you stood by Trump has inflicted hatred on innocent people, and all of that seems to be unending. I believe this policy of hate towards almost everyone living in this country will continue until Trump and his supporters are removed from office. I am using my time and energy. I hope you somehow become aware of the destruction you are inflicting on our American institutions. Our migrant friends, our standing in the world, and our environment.
Absolutely.
An angry constituent.
Thank you, Larry. That's an awful letter. Do you have a copy of that you can give to us?
I can make one.
Can you send me one?
I'll send you one.
Okay, great, awesome, thank you.
I want a copy of that.
I mean, I can't take a picture right now if anybody else wants to, but if he can email it to me, I'll send it to our group. Yeah.
Maybe Tim could put it aside.
Maureen?
That was excellent. I was listening to the news the other day, and I heard the comment that with the leftists focusing on the human rights issue, the hate and all that kind of stuff in our society, by us calling that out and focusing on that, it's a way of distracting us from looking at the economic impact of the actions that Donald Trump and his cohort are inflicting on the country through various laws that have been enacted. And it really struck me. I thought, what is the most important thing here? I mean, if we are, if they're running away with the money and changing laws and imposing all these constraints on people of color and people of difference, and they're victorious in doing that, and the whole idea is to get the economy working the way they want to get it to work, and they're all this money that they have to spend, and they're diverting it to the rich. What is going to be left of this country? We're going to be, well, first of all, we're a laughingstock in the greater world community. I mean, they're appalled, and they are feeling great pity for the people in the United States of America. What happened, and how can that happen so soon? I love your sign, the one that you were holding, about, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not paying attention. If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. Well, we're paying attention and we're outraged. And if something doesn't change, it doesn't matter what happens with the economy. It doesn't matter what happens to the poor. We're all going to be have no country to stand up for, to be proud of, to pledge allegiance to ensure that everybody that is here has the freedom and the protection of the law. If it's because you're a female, you get discriminated against. If it's because you're a person of color, if you're a person who prays in a different way, if you're of sexual orientation that is not the majority, well, this whole attitude of this hatred, this division, just imposes just horrifically awful conditions on the people of this country, who are all equal before the law now. So we have to pay attention to what mess they're making of the Department of Justice and
EPA.
the EPA, and on it goes.
Regulations.
Education,
Mhm.
all of those things. We have to pay attention to that. We have to be aware of that. But unless we do it in the light of what's motivating us, is belief that people are equal, people are to be afforded the protection of the law equally in this country, we have to do both things together. So I really was upset when I heard that, oh, we're just the do-gooders and we're going to be all worried about how people feel. In the meantime, they're raping the country and sending the proceeds higher up the food chain. So we have to be vigilant about both, and I just wanted to encourage Pat Tiberi to be aware that we do feel very deeply, and we will continue to try to talk to him, and we would really, really respect him a whole lot more if he would give us the courtesy of being with us.
That's right.
Every
Thank you.
Thursday at noon.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a turn just to say a couple words. Thank you, Tim, for listening to us every week. As everybody says, we would feel so much better if we had a chance to actually talk to Pat Tiberi about this. And I think that some of the things that Maureen was just saying and others, I get it. Pat Tiberi has a different political and economic philosophy from a lot of us here, and you know, that's all fair in American politics to disagree about mechanisms to make our country better and stronger. I think we have a lot of disagreements about what actually is a successful way of making our country better and stronger, but it's you know, becoming clearer and clearer that there was really a very, very dangerous bargain that was entered into. I'm going to look the other way and let this man that I know is not fit for the presidency, not fit on any number of grounds that do not need to be elaborated. I'm going to let him in, and then I'm going to get a few of these things that I've always wanted, tax cuts and deregulation and getting rid of the EPA. But the problem, Pat, the problem with that is we are seeing this now. It's been less than 7 months, and our country is in disarray. It's in disarray. We are on the brink of a nuclear war, and we've got Nazis running in the streets. Okay? What's going to happen in a year or 2 years? Are we going to last that long, Pat? And this chaos is on you and on the other people who entered into that bargain for their own benefit and for the benefit of certain members of the very, 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 very top 1% of our country, and that don't benefit anybody else. So look around, Pat. Get off that sinking ship. You're literally tearing our country apart. And we care about our country. We come here as patriots, taking our time to try to rescue our country. And, you know, we can all disagree on policy. We want there to be democracy, so different groups will vote and different groups will get their policies in place. But none of that will make any difference if the system has fallen apart. And increasingly, young people don't even believe in that system. We're your best bet, Pat. We believe in the system. We believe in democracy. We believe in voting. We believe in making this a better system. And there's a lot of people out there that, frankly, don't even believe in it anymore. You know, and then what are we going to do? Then what are we going to do, honestly? So you better man up, Pat Tiberi, and take some action before it's too late.
Listen up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mia.
Anybody else before we head out? Deb?
Just a quickie.
Yeah.
My sign says, it's high time to put country before party. This is not a new sign. I didn't just make it. This has been an issue for a long time. I was very heartened when members of the business community decided that, oh, they couldn't go along with some of the things that have been done recently.
They stood.
But it's so, and I'm pretty sure they're not doing it just for political reasons. They're doing it for business reasons. That should concern Pat Tiberi, who I'm sure is concerned about business. But business can't be holding it all by themselves. They need congressmen to stand up for what's right about America. All of our institutions really need to be protected. They are not being protected, and not nearly enough congressmen are speaking out in order to change this. And Pat Tiberi is one congressman who has voted consistently with Trump policies.
That's right.
Fine, he has those policies. I disagree with almost every single one of them, but nevertheless, he has a right to have those policies. He does not have a right to support the dismantling of our democracy.
That's right.
And that's what he's supporting.
That's right. Soon.
I'd just like to follow up and say it's high time also to put the country and the bedrock values of equality, fairness, and democracy above one's personal interests, whether they're financial or racist or whatever they might be. We're beyond that. We are beyond just saying some platitudes. It is time for Pat Tiberi not only to speak in platitudes, sort of platitudes, but to act. It is time to resist, and it is time to act.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Pat, the house is on fire. What the heck? What are you going to do? We're waiting for you, Pat. Please. Thank you guys so much. We are holding this country together. We're trying. We're trying.
We're doing our best.
We're doing our best.